Ladies and gentlemen, Roger Weiss.
This evening, colors are going to be presented by the color guards of the Johns Creek Veterans Association. People, freedom is not free. Someone has to pay for it. When you see a veteran, thank them for their service to our country. When you see a first responder, thank them for their service to our community. Remembering, freedom is not free, and safety is not free. Someone has to...
Detail, halt! Left, face!
Our Johns Creek Veterans Association is pleased, as is our first responders in Johns Creek. We thank you, Lieutenant, and your people for the safety we feel. When that bell rings, you run to it, you don't run from it. When you see a veteran, thank them for their service to our country. As we're here this evening, there's young men and young women all over the world paying their tabs so we can be free. We must never forget that. We have a real treat coming to Johns Creek. The Vietnam Wall, traveling wall. We had it here 3 years ago. Did any of you go see the wall when it was here? Go ahead, you raise your hand.
Yes, I did.
We had the largest number of people watching or looking at that wall when it was here than anywhere else in the United States. It was decided that they retire those walls every 5 years. We wanted that wall in Johns Creek full time. I'm pleased to announce that through the city, through the Johns Creek Veteran Association, and numerous individuals, we have purchased that wall, and it will be installed in the Newtown Memorial Park full time. The power of that wall, for those of you that came, and we got ready to open it, I advised you that it's the wall that heals, or helps with the healing process. I'm out there at 3 a.m. on Friday morning, and there's 7 veterans kneeling down, touching the wall, talking to it, laughing and crying, healing. I'm out on Saturday afternoon. This lady looked over her shoulder and said, "Mr. Wise, is that you?" And I said, "Yes." "Could you wait a minute? I want you to meet my son." I waited for about 10, maybe 15 minutes. And this guy gets up, walks over, and he says, "I want to thank you, sir. I met my father today. His mother was 3 months pregnant with him when his dad went to Vietnam." So that's the power of that wall, and we're bringing it back full time. We'll be here 24/7. So now, I want everybody to stand and let's pledge the flag of the greatest country in the world, the United States of America.
Present arms!
I pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Ready to!
God bless America.
Right, hey! Our left, foot! Detail, halt! 1, 2, detail, dismiss.
Ladies and gentlemen, that Roger Weiss, he was actually a hero that is being recognized internationally. Saturday, he will be inducted into the Georgia's Military Hall of Fame. And that is an honor to be inducted amongst all the veterans that have served from World War I to Afghanistan. He is he's unique, he's committed, and he is one in thousands. So I'm honored that he is here today, and he was able to share a few words, and he's honorable. Thank you. Okay, so we have a full plate with us tonight. Tonight is all about learning who the candidates are, where they come from, their experience, and it's not really about a gotcha question, and I've shared that information with them throughout the last few weeks. So today, it's about understanding their experience, their background, where they come from, and who are you going to be better rubbing shoulders with? Which of these candidates, which of the three candidates, at the end of the day, is more aligned with your values, your biases, because we do all have biases. We're all here for our own reasons. And look at what they're saying. Think about how they're saying it, and more importantly, understand their judgment. As they sit on that council seat, on the podium, and they have to decide, and they're looking at a number of different variables, and they're being pulled by possibly different interest groups, one direction or another. Judgment comes into play, and judgment is how we decide whether we choose an A, a B, a left, a right, a black or white. And judgment only comes through education and experience in the trade that they have. If I were to look at every single background here, I would love to set up a board of directors with these candidates as my board. We have attorneys, financial planners. We have planning people that have been serving the community and know what the community needs. We have public safety individuals that have served for years and given their whole life to service. And we have people that are new in the area and into the city. So what a group of people we have. And I'm honored that they're here. And more important, you're here. There's 80,000 residents in Johns Creek. A couple years ago, we had about 4,500 people, 5,500 people voting. The fact that you're here today on a rainy night speaks a lot for your commitment to civics and your dedication to try to make the city better. I want to thank St. Benedict's, because when I was searching for a place to have this venue, there was only clubhouses available. And the fact that St. Benedict's stepped up and said, here, use our facilities, bring as many people as you can here so that they can listen and learn and ask questions. Because this is not about myself, it's not about the candidates, it's about you, what you need, what you're looking for, and who represents you the best. So St. Benedict's, hats off to you for opening up your facilities, Taylor Lodge, to the community around you. Also, I wanted to, just a couple things, I wanted to introduce the volunteers that helped here. My daughter, Selena DiBiase, she's doing some time here. My wife, Susan DiBiase, she put up with all the planning here. Maureen is also doing time for the questions, and Christopher, who's going to be taking video for us. So I appreciate your help. Thank you. So tonight is, it's 100% non-biased, non-directional questions. It's not about a gotcha moment. We have questions that we've created. We also have questions that you've submitted to us. And for transparency purposes, literally, they're transparent. These are the yellow cards and all the questions that we have created. And this other are multicolored. You filled them out, but they're also that they came in via email. So the questions are here. We're going to be pulling from both buckets, and we're going to be pulling the questions randomly so that we all have an opportunity to take questions that may be in your domain or sweet spot, or they may be a little bit out on the edge and the fringes where maybe you're not as knowledgeable or comfortable with some of those questions. But it is transparent. And I also want to say, an individual that stepped up, Samantha Hoodline, stepped up, and she will be asking questions along with me to give me a little bit of a break. So we're going to be going back and forth. Thank you. Okay, one last point. The reason why I'm doing this, okay? I don't subscribe to any individual candidate. I think they can all attest to you. I've been extremely non-biased and level across the board. I've been in Johns Creek for 25 years, and I've seen a lot of changes. I was here in '94 when there was no Johns Creek. So I've seen the challenges, the polling, the fighting. I've seen pretty much all of the things that have gone on in the city. The racetrack that wanted to be built on Parsons Road at 141, we fought that with a number of other people in the community, and now it's going to be placed exactly where it needs to be placed on State Bridge and in Medlock Bridge. On that corner, that's where it needed to live, not on Parsons Road. So we've been around, and more importantly, as people send me all kinds of questions back and forth, the overlying theme that I hear is are you or is are the candidates leaning towards the city? Are they pro-city, pro-development, or pro-status quo? There's two camps, and the right answer is probably somewhere in the middle. Because if you don't grow, you may stagnate and become irrelevant. But if you grow unacceptably or too fast, you can't accept the growth, and it's not proper either. There's a lot of strain on infrastructure. So the right answer is there. We just have to get to it. We've been around. The city was incorporated in 2006. We're a teenager. We're 13 years in running. How many people here have teenagers that you constantly, debating and fighting with and trying to put them on the right road? And that's what Johns Creek is. When we first incorporated, when the city incorporated, it was more about how can the city protect the investment, your house, your property, your commercial property? How is the zoning, how does it make sense for you and the community back in 2006? 13 years later, we're still growing. We have growing pains. The founders of the city, I use the analogy is if you go out and dig a garden and you grab that shovel and you start digging and you start planting here, you start planting there. By the time the day's over, you're probably broke out of sweat, you're dirty, you're tired, and maybe it's time to give those reins to someone else. So the fact that you did plant that garden and you got a little dirt on it, it's okay. Now let's go ahead and get cleaned up and let's look at phase 2. What's the next chapter in Johns Creek? And everyone here in this room helps form that chapter and helps mold Johns Creek to what it needs to be. We were talking about, in 2006, we're talking about roads and parks. We're still doing some of that, and we're also talking about art centers. Art centers and a city center. Things that take us to the next level, phase 2 of Johns Creek. And that's what I hope all these people here can help drive and lead us in the right direction. So I'm taking a liberty. I do have the first question. In the first round, before we get to the first round, I want everyone to just provide introductions. Tell us a little bit about yourself. We're going to cut it down a little bit. There's a lot of questions. So we're looking at about 2.5 minutes. So we'll have got a timer. We have a yellow will give you 30 seconds, and a red will give you the end of the time. So which table wants to start? Post 6 or post 2? Really?
Step in the middle again.
Please.
Thank you, Doug. My name is Dileep. I'm a resident of Johns Creek for almost 2 decades. I'm here with my wife, Padma. We are married for 23 years. We have a daughter together, Sindhu. She's a freshman at the UGA. Professionally, I'm a small business executive with over 27 years of experience in engineering and finance. Education, I have a bachelor's degree in civil engineering, a master's in environmental engineering, and an MBA in finance from GSU. I'm a recent graduate from Leadership Johns Creek. I also graduated from Citizens Fire Academy, Citizens Police Academy. I also served on the board for Johns Creek Construction Board of Appeals. I also served on Chattahoochee High School School Governance Council for 3 years as a budget chair. During that time, we were able to bring the greenhouse to the school. I'm also on the board for a non-profit organization, an executive board member and treasurer for a non-profit called the Shelter of Love. It's an advocate against domestic violence. As a councilman, I would like to focus on 3 areas: bringing jobs and businesses into Johns Creek. Like Larry was saying, let's focus on what we already have, like revive the existing shopping centers, make them a destination place. Also, prioritize the empty office space up in Tech Park, bring more jobs into Johns Creek. Arts and culture. Johns Creek is an arts and culture city. All we need to do is develop a brand, unique brand and identity for Johns Creek through arts and culture and community center. The last one is going to be smoothing the traffic. If you want to move forward, take Johns Creek in the forward-looking directions, we cannot be stuck in the traffic. So we got to go back and work on expediting the projects, transportation and traffic relief projects that's already approved and in the pipeline. The reason I chose Johns Creek to be my home for a couple of big reasons. One is the best course. The second one is like the warm place to raise a family and build the character. I'm going to do everything in my power to go back and preserve and protect the character that's already been in Johns Creek. At the same time, taking Johns Creek in the forward-looking direction. Thank you.
Good evening. Thank you, Larry, for inviting us and allowing me the opportunity to speak with you tonight. My name is Brian Weaver, retired major from Johns Creek Police Department. Just a little about myself, born and raised in Athens, Georgia, graduate of UGA, and moved here in 1980, right after graduation. Started my law enforcement career back in 1982. I know you guys in 1982 is a long time ago. Yeah, it is. So chalk it up to experience, not age. So started my career back in 1982 with Fulton County Police. Worked there 26 years. And in 2008, when after Johns Creek decided to build a city in 2006, I was one of the ones that was sitting in the planning room with the mayor before he was mayor, the city councilman before they were city councilmen, planning this city on what type of foundation, what kind of city they want. So I retired from Fulton and started with Johns Creek in 2008. Helped build Johns Creek Police Department from the ground up. We built that department based on safety needs of the community. We customized the department based on the needs of the community. We didn't just start a police department and hit the street. We knew what the expectations were here in the city. That's why we built the department the way we did. We were the first department to have national accreditation within 3 years and state accreditation within the first 3 years of inception. So I chalk that as a win-win. That's why Johns Creek is one of the most desirable cities in this country to live, because we made sure we did the right thing as far as community concerns and safety concerns to make this one of the most desirable places to live. And that's why Johns Creek Police is one of the best in the country, because we took our time, we planned, and we planned. And we made sure we were doing what was right, and we made sure we trained our people the right way. Customer service, make sure they were knowledgeable, make sure they knew what they were doing, and make sure they knew what comes first, and that's the community. The reason I'm running for Johns Creek City Council is because I feel that I am uniquely qualified for the position. For 37 years, I have served in the community. I have been here serving as part of my DNA. I'm dedicated to the community, and I want to make sure Johns Creek continues to prosper and move forward. And 3 areas of focus is safety and security, quality of life, and economic development. Madam, thank you. Thank you.
Good evening. My name is Kent Alton. I'm your candidate for Post 4. I'm here tonight for a lot of reasons. Number one, first and foremost, I love this city. I've lived here 14 years and I'm concerned about the fact that our city needs a renewed identity, a renewed character, and a renewed vision. I believe that's the role of City Council, is to listen to residents and cast that vision that we can support, and then our decisions start to fall into place. I'm here with my wife, Charlotte, of 22 years. I ask my question to you, are we building a city that Charlotte and I would want to retire in? Our daughter, Carly, 13, is at home wondering where her parents keep going at night. I ask myself, are we building a city where she will want to go off to college and return to? I'm a professor here in Metro Atlanta. One of my students is here, not for extra credit, not for a course requirement, because he lived in Johns Creek and has moved away. I ask myself, are we creating a city that's going to bring younger generations back? I'm an attorney. We've never had an attorney serve on our city council before. Perhaps they're too busy. There's been a call in recent years for attorneys to serve in the state legislature because attorney representatives and senators are at an all-time low down in the Gold Dome. I believe my opportunity to serve is right here in my own yard. With an attorney, what you get is someone who can identify the issues, focus on relevant information, push aside irrelevant information, remain objective, and we know how to make a decision. On the campaign trail, I heard this more than a half dozen times. Our council suffers from analysis paralysis. We'll do our due diligence. When I'm on city council, we'll do our due diligence, but we will make a decision and move things forward. My mom told all 3 of her kids, you need to grow up. You need to want to make a difference, and if you do, you've got to take the risk of putting yourself out there. That's what I'm doing for this campaign. I'm not running one time for name recognition to run again in 2 or 4 years. This is the time I'm stepping up, taking the risk. I would appreciate your support. Thank
you. Well, good evening, Johns Creek. My name is Chris Coughlin. I'm your incumbent in Post 4, and I want to thank St. Benedict's for hosting and Larry for organizing this. After your intro speech, I'm considering voting for you for Post 4. That was quite a good speech. So I'm going to stray off script today and not necessarily give you my stump speech. And as Larry said, just tell a little bit about ourselves. So my wife and I moved to Johns Creek in 2008 when we decided this was going to be the community that we wanted to raise a family. Since then, we have a 7-year-old Luke, a 4-year-old Ella Grace. She's our wild card, so be careful. Keep an eye on her, Lieutenant. And then Nora Rose, our 1-year-old. And since then, we've also invited my parents. My father's a disabled Vietnam vet, and my mother's a retired special ed teacher of 40 years, and we convinced them to join us in the community. I love this community. We've been here, like I said, about 11 years, and we came here for the same reasons you did. the quality green space, the low crime, the great schools, the diverse culture. Those are all things I want Johns Creek to maintain and continue to have those variables. For a job, I work as a scientist. I partner with academics to pursue empirical research, and then I also develop adaptive pre-employment cognitive ability tests. And I really think there's been a lot of talk on the campaign trail about that we need to disregard data, we need to disregard objective thought, and I couldn't disagree more. Empiricism and objectivism and mathematics should really drive public sector thought. And since then, I've been in office for 2 years, and where I've applied novel best practices using technology, using quantitative research, my initiatives have been able to either save or increase revenue by millions of dollars. By the end of this next term, my initiatives will be in the tens of millions of dollars. That allows us to invest in those quality of life issues while also maintaining the lowest tax base in this area. So again, I really want to continue to maintain those positive values at Johns Creek. And if you want to see some of my initiatives, I always give this a plug, but it's votechriscoughlin.com/successes.html. You can see what we've done in the past 2 years and what I'd like to do in the future. So thank you.
Good evening. My name is Mary Beth Cooper, and I'm running for Post 4. I like to say I'm going to grow up with the guys. It's kind of how I grew up, too. First of all, thank you all for coming out and caring enough about our city on a rainy, nasty night that we haven't had in quite some time, the night before Halloween, where your kids are going, Mom, I don't want to be that, I want to be that. This is my son at home right now figuring out his Halloween costume. Until he's 13, he needs to figure it out all by himself. Many thanks to Larry for pulling this together, for the volunteers. 2 years ago, I was a member of the JCCA Board of Directors, and we did our debates in this room, and I know the challenging logistics of trying to get candidates all in the same night to come together. And can you do this, and can you do this? And Larry even had us move a date at the last minute because of availability and space, so all of you could be here, so thank you. I've lived in Johns Creek since 2008, moved back after being transferred to Birmingham for 10 years. My family moved down here in the early 70s when my dad left the military, and we lived in Philadelphia for a bit with the family, and then he got a job with Delta, and he got to choose where to live, which I didn't know until much later, because I really would have liked to live in Fort Lauderdale by the beach, but you know, at 6 years old, your parents don't give you a choice. So we moved to Atlanta, which was a great thing. It's interesting in Johns Creek. I've watched it grow from one of my very dear friends when I was very young, built her house in Willow Run in the 80s and called me and said, come see my brand new house. I'm so excited. It's new. And then I'm like, okay, I'm calling her. I'm on my way. Coming over from East Cobb. Drove over and went, that's a cool house. This is a cool place. There's lots of horses. There aren't that many horses. That horse farm, one horse farm is still there though, which I always is nostalgic to me. I want it to remain. But as all things in Johns Creek, we're going to grow. About 2.5 3 years ago, like a lot of you, all of a sudden the neighborhood wanted to build by us. So I got involved with Johns Creek Community Service, Johns Creek Community Association, and served as the zoning chair, and served as president of the JCCA until I resigned to run. And working with people like Racetrack to get them to where they should be rather than where they really wanted to be. So when they came back to our city, they went, this is where we want. Do you think it's going to work? And working with them and working with the communities, St. Ives and Medlock Bridge, say this is what we're doing. So I ask for your vote. Again, I thank you for coming out, and I wish you a good evening.
Hi, how are you? My name is Adam Thomas. I am also running as the fourth person in Post 4. A little bit about me. My dad was a preacher, so he would always say, there's empty seats in the front. He would make sure everybody filled up the front row. So if anybody wants to come up to the front so we can see you better, that'd be better. My wife is here tonight. We've been married for 24 years. We live here in Johns Creek. We live in North Fulton County. We are from the north. We've got a sign in our house called, it says Northern by birth, Southern by choice. And so we've been down here since 2003. A little bit about me, my background, I have never been in politics, but I've always been involved. I tend to get involved in things, and my motto in life is when I get involved in something, I'm going to do it full force, and I'm going to leave it better when I leave than when I came into it. And you know, in my business world, the things that pay my bills, I've had the opportunity for the last 25 years in working with people of all different walks of life. Business owners, both locally and nationally, people that work for Fortune 500 corporations, which makes up a predominant amount of people here in the United States, all over the country, and some athletes. And they all have different goals in mind for what they want to do. But the number one thing that everybody needs is a plan. And one of the things that sparked my interest about living here in this community is that we have a plan, but we lack a team, our current city council, that executes. And as I'm sitting in traffic, wondering what's going on with traffic, wondering what's going on with all of the money that we spend day to day that's being collected in the extra sales tax that we're paying through T-Splosh, my question is, when are those things going to be executed? And my mind works around execution. And so here's what I'm asking for you tonight. As you listen to all these different things, we actually provide questions, answers to your questions that you've written, which is one of the reasons why we're here, is to represent votes. I'll tell you, the most humbling experience I've had is over the last 60 days, walking door to door to neighbors' house, knocking on their door, afternoon, evening, scaring some people with this guy coming up, thinking that I'm selling something, and listening to their story about their frustrations, their joys, and things like that. And here's what I want you to know. I'm used to fighting for my clients. I'm used to fighting for what's fair, and I want to fight for you. Thank you.
Good evening. Thank you, Larry, for putting this together. Thank you, Parsons Run HOA, for putting this together as well. And thank you all for being here this evening. As Mary Beth stated, it's a rainy, wet night, the night before Halloween, and I'm sure we would all rather be doing other things. My name is Judy LaFave, and I have been a Johns Creek resident for 22 years. In that time, I have seen things grow and change. Because while I've been a resident here for 22 years, I actually lived across the river in Peachtree Corners and grew up in that area and watched everything grow up around here. I got involved through a zoning case. My HOA nominated me to the Johns Creek Community Association Board of Directors. I became president, and for about 2 years, expanded the role of the JCCA in the community. We went from being primarily zoning to actually educating those on HOA boards. In that time, I got involved with my professional association, and we got to change a state law. That bill finally passed this last legislative session. So I started looking around at what else I could do and how else I could help in the city. In 2017, I had been appointed to the Planning Commission, and that was great. We were able to review the new comprehensive land use plan and get that passed and onto council for their passage as well. What I'm hoping to do is take that a step further and work on a master plan for the city. We need to look at how we want to grow, what we want to do, and like many of those that are up here as well when walking, people want an identity. They want to know where we're going and what we're growing into. So, having said that, I think we're on a good path. We need people that are willing to look at all the problems, listen to all of the residents, and when we have difference of opinion, come together and listen to each other and form a solution that might sometimes be out of the box or maybe unconventional, but it's a solution that works with everybody in the city. Thank you.
Hi. So about 4 years ago, I started watching and attending Johns Creek City Council meetings, and I've also been talking to residents, and one of the takeaways, a couple takeaways would be the fact that you guys want a strong, independent leader. You guys also want a plan, a vision for the city that includes infrastructure, planning, parks, pocket parks. You want arts. You want to increase your quality of life. The other thing is you also want transparency and fiscal responsibility. Those are things that I know that you would want for a city, and I know I can do that for you. I've lived in and around Johns Creek for about 30 years, and actually I also grew up in Fisher Corners, but I was born in Taiwan and then moved here at 4, and then grew up in Stone Mountain and moved to Fisher Corners. But, so I've seen this area grow. But my parents also live here. My parents have retired here. They've been here since 1988. They built their house here, and they live about a mile and a half from me. So I am fully invested. My kids grew up here. It is something that I really, really love in the city. It's just the fact that we have a community. I want to keep that community for the rest of us also. I'm a graduate of Georgia Tech. I was a project manager for AXA Financial and MetLife. I was a team leader. I managed people, I managed products, and I managed projects. I now work as an independent consultant, and I still work with some of the same people I used to work with because I know how to build relationships, and I know how to work with others really well. I also want to talk about the fact that it's not just about me that I'm representing, it's about you. I'm here because I want to represent you. The residents of Johns Creek don't really have a voice sometimes, and I want to give that voice to you. Am I done? Am I the only one that listens to this? Anyway, the reason why I'm running is really because I want to represent you, and I know that you are our biggest, best asset in Johns Creek, and I appreciate you guys.
Thank you.
I turn this way so I can see y'all. My name is Erin Elwood. Thank you again, all of you, for coming out on a rainy day. Sorry, some of you have heard the spiel before, so I apologize, but I am running because I would like the City Council to have community-focused governance, by which I mean a City Council that does city stuff. A City Council that builds the parks that we funded and all voted on by a wide majority 3 years ago. A City Council that supports a city center that we've been talking about for a very long time and actually breaks ground on that and can materialize that vision. A City Council that promotes arts and culture, and a City Council that protects the environment that is our shared home. I grew up in Chattanooga, Tennessee, in a community outside Chattanooga, Tennessee. It was probably a lot like what Johns Creek used to be like in the 1980s. We had a river, we had creek, a lot of wildlife. I don't remember any bears, but otherwise very similar, I think. And so when I hear people talk about what Johns Creek used to be like, I understand the nostalgia very strongly, because that is a large reason why I chose Johns Creek when we decided where to make our home. We chose Johns Creek because of the river in our backyard, the woods, and the natural beauty. However, I'm a millennial. I'm 35 years old. I have a 5-year-old son, and I'm looking to live here until I retire at age 65, let's say. So for the next 30 years, Johns Creek will be home. And what will Johns Creek look like, and how will it continue to recruit and attract people of my generation to live here and make this their home and where they choose to raise their families? We have some stiff competition with what's happening around North Fulton and into Forsyth County, and we want Johns Creek to continue to attract people, to have the best schools, and it would be great to the community. So when I talk about community-focused governance and the quality of life services I want the city to provide, it is with that goal of making us and keeping us the best city in North Fulton in which to raise a family. I moved to Georgia when I went to college. I went to Agnes Scott College, and after that I went to Georgia State University College of Law. I went to law school while working full-time, and I would go take classes at night, so it took me 4 years to graduate instead of 3, but I didn't want to get into a lot of student debt. And since then, I have practiced variety of property law and employment law, especially representing state and local government officials who have witnessed ways for abuse in government. So in other terms, would be a government whistleblower. And I will leave it at that. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much, everyone. Very impressive backgrounds. It runs the whole gamut as far as from technology to safety to law to financial planning and to planning for city and cities in general. Thank you very much. Thank you very much. So I have the first question here. I took liberties of pulling, and then from there we'll go ahead and start randomly pulling questions, and Sam will go ahead and ask us the following questions. This question is about a minute, so we'll try to make this a little faster as we go. Okay. Today in Johns Creek, only a few large parcels of vacant land are available for development. Once these land lots have been sold and developed in compliance with current zoning and the comprehensive plan, developers may begin to apply traditional real estate models and propose highest and best use models to repurpose older neighborhoods or assemblages. In general, are you in favor of higher density development to increase tax revenues to support funding of projects such as parks, city centers, and general infrastructure? And if not, how do you expect to do it? Eric, start with this.
Oh, start with me. Okay. I know high density is a touchy issue in this community in particular. I see what other cities are doing, and high density is not in and of itself an evil to me. You look at Avalon, and houses, townhomes are selling for $1 million, and there are apartments that are renting at $3,000 and $4,000 and $5,000 a month. So in and of itself, when people worry about high density, they think about Section 8 housing, they think about things that I don't think would apply in the way that Johns Creek would, I forgot, we only have a minute, that would be done. Sorry, I just lost my train with the folder. All right, so I don't think that the concerns that people raise with high density are necessarily in and of themselves going to come to pass in Johns Creek. I don't ever see the city council allowing anything like that to pass. But if it's in the best interest of the city, both for property values and for helping support something like a city center, I would be in favor of it. Thanks. I know, maybe we should be, just change it. Let's change it.
Okay. If you just, I get a question?
No, do you want me to read it over?
Do you mind if you just repeat it for me?
Sure. Today in Johns Creek, only a few large parcels of vacant land are available for development. Once these land lots have been sold or developed in compliance with the current zoning and the comprehensive plan, developers may begin to apply traditional real estate models, highest and best use, meaning models to repurpose older houses and land or assemblages. In general, are you in favor of higher density developments to increase the tax base revenue to support funding projects like parks, city centers, or general infrastructure? And if not, how do you plan to develop?
I don't think you have to necessarily have high density to increase your tax base. I believe you can actually increase business, and then if we actually encourage better business and more business to come here, we don't have to worry about stuff like that. The other thing is it also based on what the market will bear. It's not necessarily based on what I think, it's really based on what the market will bear.
Okay, thank you.
So if I think about the details in that question, Larry, we may be into a new comp plan by then. And based on the history of how the city does the comprehensive land use plan, we do take citizen input. I think we'll have to see what the residents will say by then. I doubt anything will really change in regards to density and what we like to see or won't like to see. So right now I know Tech Park is about the only area where density that would make a dent, if you would, could be built. But I agree, we need to look at being a little more business friendly, small business friendly, and expanding the tax base for that. Thank you.
Larry, this is an easy question. If you want to raise your property taxes, then you don't want high-density businesses. I'm not for high-density housing, but you definitely need to have high-density businesses. The right businesses come into Johns Creek. I've talked to a lot of business owners. When you have a business owner that wants to come in and rip apart a strip mall and put a new facility there, and they're willing to spend $8 or $10 or $15 million, whatever it is, you need to figure out a way to work with that business owner to let them do that. And in Johns Creek, we do not do that. I want to remind everybody that Georgia is the #1 state to do business in. Johns Creek is not business friendly.
So in Johns Creek, we've really got 3 big parcels left. One up in Shakrag, one right down 141 across from Atlanta Athletic Club, known as Heisman Field. There's another one that's not so as big as those 2. One at Embry Farm had a plan to build on it. It wasn't the right plan. What we have to do is follow what's in our plans. I worked on the Embry Farm with the residents up there to fight almost 400 homes going on 200 acres, including townhomes. We've got to put the right thing. We've got 3 areas in Johns Creek that we could do mixed-use high density. We have the shopping center at the corner of Kimball Bridge and State Bridge. We have the shopping center at the corner of State Bridge and Jones Bridge. And we have the Regal Cinema Shopping Center. We can develop those. They have to be done right. We can work with businesses. We can work with the homeowners in the surrounding areas. That helps expand our tax base. That helps the small businessman. That gives them walkability. That gives them movement.
I know you're looking for differentiation between the candidates, but Mary Beth is exactly right. We developed the comprehensive land use plan. It took many hours, a lot of input from residents and businesses and city staff to designate those areas that, and essentially how they are planned and what they will be utilized for. So we have to follow that plan. We can't chase tax dollars by looking for redevelopment. If you look at our trends for tax revenues, we're quite fine. I think we're the one of 190 cities with a AAA credit rating. We are financially okay. We don't need to change our comprehensive land use plan and put high-density units in just to ostensibly grow our tax base. That's not the right process. We have a resident-friendly and business-friendly comprehensive land use plan that we need to follow.
Thank you for the question about real property and using highest and best use. My students probably nodding. We talked about that today in class. I'm a real estate attorney, a dirt lawyer as we call it. High density is not a vulgar word. There are people on our council that are no growth, that want to say, now that I'm in Johns Creek, I want to close the gate behind me. There are many different types of high density. There's anything from affordable, low-cost housing, all the way up to housing that does not have a yard, that would be lot line, but a large 2,000, 3,000 square foot home. We don't need any more shopping centers in Johns Creek. What we do need is to work with developers who share our vision, but guess what? We've got to get the vision, develop a vision, before we know with developers who can partner with us. What you can't do is say, I'm in favor of a town center and then want to tie the hands of a national investor that's looking for a regional investment. What will happen is they'll go to Cary, North Carolina, and they'll build a town center there instead of where we need it here in Johns Creek.
Thank you.
think we all pretty much agree on one thing, that it is a good thing to lessen the tax burden on our homeowners. We all agree to that. And we all agree that we need to attract businesses, small businesses, any business that are viable and will be, I guess, considered to be a win-win for Johns Creek. But we have to do it in moderation. That's going to grow. We have to consider our infrastructure. We have to consider the impact it will have on our roads, our schools. We have to consider all of that before we make a good decision. But one of the main things we need to be aware of is that Johns Creek needs to grow. We all know that. We all know that. How do we do it? We have guidelines in place with the comprehensive land use plan. So we follow those guidelines. We listen to the community. We make good decisions based on all the information once we get it. But we have to do it in moderation, and we have to make sure that it makes sense. After we get all the facts, after we get the information, and make sure that we're attracting the right kind of businesses that will grow with the community and establish partnerships in the community, and it'll be win for our citizens here in Johns Creek.
Thank you, Brian.
We need to look at three aspects. Even before looking at the high density, we need to go back and focus on reviving the existing shopping centers, like making them a destination place. And also look at bringing more jobs into Tech Park, where we have 400,000 square feet of empty space. Johns Creek only has about 10% of jobs in North Fulton. We need to go back and see why is that. We need to go back and create an environment, business-friendly environment, and resident-friendly environment to bring in more jobs into this one. So we need to have a right balance between the residents and the businesses. So yes, we want to shift some balance from the resident into the businesses, but we can do that even before going into the high density development. The other thing we need to look at is a community improvement district. Some of these counties, so we have about 8 regions, so we need to go back and look at individual regions and see if we can make some of those into CID. It's called Community Improvement District. Like Gwinnett County has it, and Forsyth, so that's another good initiative that we need to look at to see how practical it is. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, thank you very much. So what we're going to do right now is we're going to have someone pick the next question, and we'll just do it right here.
Thank you very much for the opportunity to participate.
Could you introduce yourself, knowing that we don't know who you are?
Oh, I'm sorry. Did I introduce myself?
No.
I'm sorry. My name is Larry DiBiase, and I live in Parsons Run. This whole event started in our subdivision, and at our clubhouse. The HOA was actually, we were doing it for our community, and because of the imminent rain that was out here and the potential that this was going to be well attended, we decided to move it. Thanks. Thank you.
Okay, this is a two-part question. As reported in 2016 by Comparitech, a technology research firm, the Atlanta area has the most cameras per 1,000 residents, breaking the top 10 position in the world. Part one of the question is, do you support the recent MOU signed by the city with Flock, a camera surveillance system for neighborhoods? And part two is, are you willing to potentially violate a person's Fourth Amendment rights for illegal search and seizure in the name of safety? And we'll start with Mr. Chamberlain.
We'll do about 45 seconds, so we'll come in, give you a minute.
Like all the other candidates, when I was doing door to door, a lot of people was asking about the safety. So I would say that MOU done at Medlock Beach is a good one. In two ways. One is like it's going to have the access to the police department for all the information. They're not going to use it until they have a request or until there's an incident. So if an individual wants to opt out of that one, they have a choice. So I would say the MOU is good. That would give the first responders and the police officers the ammunition before even getting to the site and address the issue. Thank you.
tell you, as second in command of Johns Creek Police Department, this was a great move, a great opportunity, because when stuff happens, you don't have time to wait. We call it accident circumstances. If something happens to one of you or one of your family members, you'll probably want police to do whatever they can to resolve the issue or solve the crime. That's what this was all about. It wasn't about violating people's rights. It was about getting the job done, making sure that there are not more victims, and that the people who did this are arrested and put away so they can't harm anybody else. It wasn't about harming and violating people's rights, anything like that. I think the people in the subdivision had the opportunity to opt out if they wanted to. So, but just to bring up one other thing, while I'm out canvassing, everybody's got cameras on the house, so you're on camera. You ring the doorbell, you knock it on the door, you're on camera. So you're not violating anybody's rights. Thank you, Mike.
9/11 brought to the forefront the tension between governmental rights and personal freedoms. So the powers of the government and the rights of the individual came to the forefront, and that tension is something that we deal with. There is no such thing as an absolute governmental power. They're all subject to restriction, and there's no such thing as an absolute individual right. They're all subject to the restrictions the government, the regulations the government place on it. With recording license plates that come into neighborhoods, there is no reasonable expectation of privacy. When you're driving your car here to there, it's not whether it's recorded, it's whether you have a reasonable expectation that it may be recorded. Yes, there are cameras everywhere. You don't have a reasonable expectation of privacy. I understand you. We want to protect those individual rights, but that tension is there, and I believe in this case it falls to the government's right to make that recommendation.
Thank you.
So Larry, I thought there was no gotcha questions. I think this was the hardest vote I've ever come across in my brief tenure. And so I actually support the MOU. There was 2 MOUs. There was one with Ring. That was to allow officers to contact those individual homeowners if they could see video evidence if there was a crime in their community. But the Flock was a little more interesting in that it did record all the vehicles exiting or entering the neighborhood. And so in the end, I'm a firm believer in voluntarism. If you ask for something and you're willing to, like I said, Medlock Bridge asked for this to be put into their neighborhood. And so by their request, I try to be a voice of the residents. But I was concerned about how the data is utilized. It's not necessarily the surveillance or anything like that. It's the fact that Flock is a third-party vendor. So I don't necessarily trust those folks with our data, but you can see through Facebook and the ubiquitousness of your data privacy is already gone, and that's an unfortunate thing. But in the end, the Medlock Bridge residents voted for it, and that's something that they wanted in their particular community, so that's why, in the end, I did support that MOU.
So I believe there were 6 HOAs that had put in Flock cameras. What's interesting to me is there's one large subdivision that's had cameras up for quite some time. They're just not Flock. And they have a big old sign when you come in. We're taking your picture. Anywhere you travel in the country, your picture is being taken. You go into Brookhaven, I can guarantee you, your picture is being taken by the police themselves. And it's being stored by a third party. But that's how we become safer in and of ourselves. It is not against the Fourth Amendment right. I take your picture in here right now, as someone's taking my picture in here right now. I have no expectation of privacy. You're in a public place. You're on a public road. Maybe in your private vehicle. We're not taking a picture of you. We're taking a picture of your car. The vote was right. I'm happy that we have a memorandum of understanding on both Ring and Flock. Thank you.
I'm just going to say yes, I do support it. does not violate our Fourth Amendment rights. Watch Facebook in Congress.
Right, okay, so I happened to attend the city council meeting in the work session prior when this was presented. And both the police chief and the city attorney went through the fact that our city streets are public streets, cameras are up everywhere, you're in a neighborhood that's not gated, it's a public city street. So yes, they can have the cameras that take pictures in an effort to reduce crime. Now, as far as violating, I don't believe it does. The only reason the police department would go for those photos is if there was a crime that had been committed. Thank you.
I agree, this is a gotcha question. I actually was at that council meeting and I saw a couple of HOA residents that from Prestwick that actually spoke up for it. And I agree that it's something that the police department and the HOAs wanted. I don't know if it's necessarily the right move per se, just because I actually am a Fourth Amendment person. I'm a Bill of Rights person, I'm a Constitution person. So I believe in individual rights. I'm conflicted because it could be if someone gives a false accusation that could actually hurt the person who is being recorded and then is tracked down for no reason. So I'm conflicted, but if it's the residents that want it, and that's something that they really want, then I absolutely would agree with that. However, there is some confliction on my part, just because I believe it does hurt some of the individual rights that someone may have.
Thank you.
So, right after law school, I did a 2-year stint at the Federal 11th Circuit Court of Appeals, which is the appellate court right under the Supreme Court. And probably 70% of my cases were criminal appeals, and it was all Fourth and Fifth Amendment violations. So I watched this debate with bated breath, like, oh my gosh, talking about unreasonable search and seizure. I agree the case law is that you don't have a reasonable expectation of privacy on public streets. So in that regard, I don't know that it actually violates Fourth Amendment rights, but it makes me very uncomfortable when we're ceding that much power to the government. That being said, people were asking the government to take those rights from them, right? And so in that regard, I tried to think, well, how would I have handled the situation if I had been up there? How would I have voted? And what I would have liked to have seen is some due diligence from the HOAs that were asking for it, that they had talked to all of the people in their communities, and that there was actually buy-in, because we all know there's a lot of voter apathy, like at the city council level, there's voter apathy to your HOA. How many people actually vote for the HOA board? That they actually did their due diligence and showed that the people of the neighborhood were aware and actually wanted it and were willing to cede those rights to the government.
Thank you, Aaron. Okay, real quick, I'm going to throw in a lightning question here. This is a yes or no with the question, given the fact that the question has a lot of variables, a lot of what-ifs, possibilities, and a lot of data that you need to properly answer the question. I respect that. But I'm overall trying to get an idea, do you fundamentally believe this to be a yes or no based on what you've learned so far with your candidate running and the research you've done? I'm sure everyone here is probably interested in this.
No caveats.
I'm sorry? No caveats. So yes or no, try to keep it short. Okay, I'm going to start with Mary Beth this time. Okay, in general, do you support expanding Bud Bridge from 4 lanes to 6 lanes? Yes or no?
No at the current time.
It will eventually happen.
Is that a yes?
No for now.
Not at this time.
I'm sorry?
Not at this time.
Not at this time?
It's a no.
Nope.
It's going to happen, it's a question of when is the right time. So I suppose that's a yes.
A hard no. We'll do it or the feds will do it.
We'll do it if the state will do it, but right now, no. I think we need to look at other things besides it.
No, until the Peachtree City and the Forsyth, they do it. No, for now, until they do it.
All right. Thank you. Does anyone have a follow-up to that question? Does anyone have a follow-up? Okay, we'll move on. Don't be warned. Given the recent road construction projects such as expansion of Eppers Bridge, SR 21, pathways, large sidewalks have been embedded into the project. Are you an advocate for pathways throughout the city and interconnecting to current pathways such as the Greenway? How will you encourage local businesses and or homeowners to allow pathways to cross the property given the potential negative elements which accompany such pathways? How will you fund the project?
Yes, I support the sidewalks and the connecting to the place. I do support that.
Okay. This is a little longer. You know, take a minute. A little more detail on that.
What we do, like, I do run half marathon, so when I'm running around the cities, like there are a few areas where like going to the green, I don't have a choice. I can't run on the road. So yes, we do need the pathways all around the city, and also connecting the greenways is a good thing too. The funding part, you need to go back and look at like this. You need to go back and look at the road projects and see if it can fund it. So I would rather get it from along with the road projects and use it from that funds.
Can we engage this in like 30 seconds? Okay, I'm trying to get on the question. Okay. Sure. Given the recent road construction projects such as expansion of Eppers Bridge, SR 120, pathways, large sidewalks have been embedded into the projects. Are you an advocate for more pathways throughout the city and interconnecting to current pathways such as the Greenway? How will you encourage local businesses and or homeowners to allow pathways across the property given the potential negative elements which accompany such pathways? How will you fund the project?
I think it's a positive thing because I think those pathways will stimulate growth, not only for the neighborhoods and the connectivity for businesses, but also it'll be an alternative means of transportation that we use. So that's something we need to consider. And just like we have the T-SPOS project, we get money from the state and the feds, then we also can look at getting money from them to assist with these projects too. We look at what Atlanta's doing. It's just not city of Atlanta money. They get money from the federal and state organizations and also private ones. So I think we have to look beyond the means of Johns Creek in order to get the funds and establish some partnership with the federal, local, and state agencies in order to make this a success. I mean, that's the key because Johns Creek just don't have the money to do it by themselves, but they all the money's out there, there's organizations out there that are willing to help and stimulate growth here in the city. So I think it's a win-win.
Residential areas that abut commercial areas need to be connected with sidewalks because that provides safety for those pedestrians. We also need areas in our city that encourage people to get outdoors and provide a place for those that want to be outdoors. I don't believe our goal needs to be 100% connectivity with our sidewalks. What we need to make sure we're doing is when we build something, we have to make sure that we really want it because there's cost associated with maintaining it. In a city, one of the biggest liabilities is sidewalks, where they become uneven because part settles and part does not. And so we need to make sure that when we make a decision to build walking spaces, trails, and sidewalks, that we fund not only the current construction, but the current maintenance.
Thank you.
So I think we're talking about two different things. I think we have sidewalks and trails, and then I think maybe this question is referring to more of a multimodal policy. So I think your 12-foot trails that allows for pedestrian, cyclists, and potentially golf cart use. I'm not a believer in eminent domain, so if the city just wants to connect something and wants to do it through your backyard, front yard, or take your house, I'm not going to support that, but there's a lot of opportunities to connect, and I've actually been working with community development on multimodal policy. In fact, if you recall during the meeting with the Convention and Visitor Bureau, one of my suggestions of how we appropriate those funds was to produce a greenway from McGinnis Ferry to Abbott's Bridge, where we own the land, where the feds own the land, so we don't have to worry about eminent domain. And some of the funding would have either come through ARC, or also I've been working with someone in our city administration about kind of how Swanee did their greenway. They got, the Atlanta Falcons to buy 1,000 feet. So things like that. There are plenty of opportunities for capital campaigns to build those greenways. But yeah, we can make connectivity, but I'm not going to force it down your throat. That's not my goal. I want to respect your property. But when there is opportunity, yeah, we need to follow our sidewalk trail and then implement a multimodal policy. That was 30 seconds.
So this was tried. Let's try to connect our neighborhoods. Do you want it in your backyard? Do you think St. Ives wants it in their backyard so people from Medlock Bridge can get to Publix and walk? No? If you want a multi-modal trail with golf carts in your backyard, raise your hand. 1, 2 people, 3, 4, 5, 6. Awesome. You know what? Let's connect. The challenge is not many people want it, because what comes with it can be bad. We need sidewalks in the city where we don't have them before we start putting trails in. We need sidewalks along Jones Bridge Road that doesn't have it, which means we have to make a decision on T-Splost on Jones Bridge Road.
Thank you.
Yeah, one of the things that I think that we need is one of my platforms is quality of life, and I think connectivity through neighborhoods is on a case-by-case basis, but as Mary Beth said, one of the biggest issues that we have is we watch some roads getting repaved, side streets, things like that. What they don't take into account is the sidewalk or expansion of a road. And I'm going to tell you that my daughter, as I used to grow up riding my bicycle on the sides of roads. Today, with the congestion and people texting and driving, even though you're not allowed to do it, it's not safe. And so, if we can expand our roads using sidewalks along some of our major highways to connect people, I think I'm for it.
Sidewalks. I remember a time in the city when nobody really wanted sidewalks and we were told they wouldn't be used. I've seen them be used. I live off of Abbott's. I go out on a Saturday morning and I see families walking up and down, whether they're leaving their subdivision and going to the public shopping center or the library. So I do support sidewalks. I do know that trails through backyards was shot down dramatically. People don't want strangers going through their backyard. So until that time changes, where we have a different sense of community, then that will change as well. 30 seconds, thank you.
I'm a fan of sidewalks. I'm a fan of being able to use parks, greenways. I agree that trails is probably not a good time right now. You've got privacy issues. People don't want people cutting through their backyards. So I don't believe that's something that we would get from the residents. However, let's get our sidewalks. Let's get them done.
Okay, so I want sidewalks everywhere and trails everywhere. Obviously, if the neighborhood doesn't want trails, we should force them on them. But I just think that people are looking to be outside more. They're looking for more walkability. They're looking for things to do with their family. And there is definitely a trend towards that with the Beltline and elsewhere. And I think that we should bring it up again. And if the time's not right now, bring it up again in the future. But when I've been canvassing, the neighborhoods that have sidewalks inside their neighborhoods, the feel in that neighborhood is so different because everybody's out, they're walking in the neighborhood, the kids on the tricycle, compared to neighborhoods that have no sidewalks.
Thank you. Okay. Another speed round question real quick here. Yes or no? In general, do you support expanding Jones Bridge Road from State Bridge to Waters Road from 2 lanes to 4 lanes? So,
It's on our T-Spot list. I particularly don't see the need, but guess what? It's not what I want, it's what the city needs. And so if We believe that those that use that road, and it's a thoroughfare, that we need to make sure that traffic is moving. Again, I don't have, I forgot, yes or no. Yes, if it's needed. Sorry, I didn't catch the lightning. No. Nope.
Yes, it's a Tier 1 T-SPLOST project funded, and there is limited room. It is for congestion relief.
Yes.
Yes.
No. There should be flexibility, so no.
Can you repeat the question? I'm so sorry. Was it like?
In general, do you support Jones Bridge Road, expanding it from State Bridge to Waters Road, from 2 to 4 lanes?
I've yet to hear a person that wants it. That being said, it is on the T-SPLOST list. So, I'm undecided. Can I say that? It's not a yes or no. I'm undecided.
Okay.
I would say no for now. At least if you need a connection relief, you could add the middle turn lane or right or left turn lane. No for now.
I said whatever relieves traffic. I know it's a heavily congested area, so might not happen now, but it's not happen later, but mainly in the south.
So you're saying it's a yes if it's just.
Right.
Thank you. All right, so I've got questions here, email questions as well, some of the cards you filled out, and more so. Okay. So we've done a question about background. I'll read it to you. Those three down here, you guys. What is your background and what are your qualifications? Do you have to serve on the city council? So it's a okay. So try to.
Okay, so this is somewhat related. Why did you decide to run for the office, and will you have time to devote to the job that will be required of you?
Let's make this 30 seconds.
Well, let's start with Aaron.
I didn't feel like there was anyone on city council that had my perspective or my forward-looking vision on city council. So that is what encouraged me to run. And yes, I do believe I have the time. I said earlier about how I went to law school at night and worked a full-time job. Just as an example of my work ethic, I managed to graduate in the top 10 of my class despite doing that. And so my work ethic and my analytical skills have allowed me to do the work of city council, I think, in a timely manner.
I actually, like I said, I started watching and attending city council meetings and realized that our voices weren't being heard and the residents weren't being represented necessarily, so that's part of the reason why I ran. And I know I have time because next year my son is a senior, so I am going to be an empty nester. And I spent the last 17 years taking care of my children all on my own. I am going to be able to put that dedication that I did for my kids to the city.
I actually decided to run in April. I have been involved in the city for almost 6 years and knew that this was what I wanted to do. It was honestly the next logical step for me. And yes, I will have time to do it. I have a private practice, so my schedule's a little more flexible than others.
Yes, I will have time to devote a lot of time to this. The reason I decided to run was really threefold. Number one, execution. We have 6 or 7 people, 6 council members, and 1 mayor that can yet to agree to execute anything. It just goes around in a circle. The second thing is we're growing in the wrong direction with some of our businesses. I'll be the number one person to say, with the vape shops and the epidemic that we have in this country, we're having the wrong businesses develop in our community. it will ruin our property values if we continue down this path.
So I am blessed that I work for a company that values being a citizen wherever you serve. So with the ability of flex time and also being a single mom for quite some time of 2 boys, I can manage time very well, trying to manage all of that. I decided to run because I was tired of staying to council, do something, so I decided to be on council to do something.
So I've pretty much proven that I can do the job and put the time in, and also the ideas and the best practices that are needed. Again, if you look at the successes that we've had in a mere 2 years, whether it be parks, public safety, government efficiency, development, all those categories, we've had major successes in the past 2 years. So the fact that we haven't got anything done is a blatant falsehood, folks. So, but again, I've done it, and I can continue to do it. It's no problem.
My motivation for running is because there's things going on in our city that embarrass me personally. It embarrasses me that Fulton County gave us $250,000 to fund a feasibility study for an art center when our city council has zero funding for the arts in its budget. That's an embarrassment. We've become insulary. Other people in the region, other municipalities don't want to work with us. And we need to change that. We celebrated too long. I've got the time. I teach. I practice law. I've got a long-suffering wife that supports my desire to serve, and I'll do whatever it takes to get the job done.
After serving this community for 37 years, the last 11 second in command of the Johns Creek Police, I retired in April. So yes, I do have the time. The leadership skills, the experience, the know-how, and everything else that goes with that to make good decisions, to serve on city council, to make me uniquely qualified. And I live in Johns Creek, been living there for 18 years, and I knew I wasn't going anywhere. So what better way to solve some of the issues is to get involved and stay involved. And that's why I want to continue to serve. Thank you.
Yes, I will have the time. I'm a small business owner, small business executive, so I have the flexibility of working around my schedule. And then I'm empty nester too, so both aspects I have the time. The reason I'm running is a Leadership Johns Creek program that motivated me. Looking at the other side of what is happening in the city, and based on my educational skills in the engineering, finance, and operations, and the community leadership, I thought I could add value to the Johns Creek. I've been a resident for almost 19, 20 years, so I thought at least I should give something back to the community. So yes, based on my skills and other stuff, I would add positive value to the current council. Thank you.
Just try to make these 30 seconds if we can. We have so many questions, and really start getting into the deep stuff here.
Given the recent property tax reduction, do you believe current revenue projections are sustainable, knowing that we have large projects such as the city center, fire stations, parks, or do you feel that a tax increase may be needed? Let's start. Mr. Tuckle, was it?
Can you repeat the question?
Sure. Given the recent property tax reduction, do you believe current revenue projections are sustainable, knowing that we have large projects such as the city center, fire stations, parks, or do you feel a tax increase may be needed?
Based on the current resource, City Council was able to give back the $2 million back to the residents. It all depends upon the study, the infrastructure study that's happening. So based on the study, they will come back and tell us exactly how much of the resource we need to keep. Based on that one, we can decide if we have excess or if we are short. So we wouldn't be able to make any decision until the study is done and we come back with a recommendation. Thank you.
Yeah, I think we have to just look at the current budget, what it is now, and study the budget to make sure that we're doing everything and being diligent with the money that we have to use, the taxpayers' money. But at the same time, we need to look at the budget and cut out any waste we have. And I'm sure there's some waste in the budget that we need to review and consider more partnerships with our federal, local, and state agencies, so we can get money from them to assist us with the parks and some of the roads, like the $37 or $40 million we have in the bank that we're not using.
I'm a low tax advocate, but at the same time, our city needs some revenues to do the work and provide the services that our residents want. I was the first one at the Thornhill subdivision that referred to lowering the taxes when we had only a $4 million surplus in 1 year. Gamesmanship. They did it in an election year, knowing full well they would have to raise your taxes the next year. In fact, I'll go so far as to say that even though it was a 7-0 vote, when you don't plan for 5 or 10 years, it was a reckless decision.
So I've been pretty consistent on this. In 2017, 2018, and 2019, I tried to lower the millage rate and offset it by the surplus in sales taxes. It failed 3-4 in 2017. In 2018, it failed 3-4, and this year it passed unanimously. So I've been fairly consistent. I do believe it was my investment policy and insourcing and community development and a couple other things that gave us a lot of this extra revenue. So we actually did just have the biggest tax decrease in Johns Creek history, but at the same time, we have a budget. We have a 10-year financial plan. We know what the needs are for the next 10 years. So we can adjust the millage rate based on our needs. And that's the problem that everyone's forgetting here, that we usually come in on expenditures 7 to 10% with a 95% degree of confidence every budget year. And then we come over revenues 5 to 10% every year. Every year we put, it's anywhere from 2 to 8 million in surplus. You got to understand that we have a 10-year financial plan to follow, and as long as we follow that, we will adjust the millage rate. But again, that's my time.
So most people don't realize that property taxes are not our largest revenue source. So if you want to help our revenues, go spend your money in Fulton County. Not in Johns Creek, in Fulton County. It helps us. So go to Avalon. Spend your money. Don't go to Halcyon. Go to Avalon. But those are the things we need to do. Yes, we're probably going to have to raise the millage rate based on the numbers I ran. Should it have been lowered? I don't know. Did you want your money back? It's kind of those things. You want the city to hold it, or do you want to hold it? It's a catch-22.
Taxes are inevitable. We pay them. I hate to pay them. We have an opportunity to raise the foundation of our revenue through smart businesses, which, yes, sales tax in Fulton County is one of our biggest revenue generation for our community. Property taxes are second. Businesses can be a strong third. There's a reason Alpharetta is doing well with Flush with Cash. They have great businesses. We have to get the focus on good businesses in our city.
So I remember the millage rate discussion, and I saw that it was lowered, and I personally feel it was lowered a little too much. While we'd like to get money back, in this case, it's not a good thing. Too much was given back. We have a fire station that needs to be built. It was deferred, and anytime you defer a project, that automatically increases the cost 20 to 30%. So where are we going to come up with that revenue if we keep cutting and keep cutting and keep cutting? How are we going to grow as a city and support an arts center if we keep cutting and keep cutting and keep cutting?
I actually think that what we did, because I know that we've been trying to lower our millage rate for many years, or a couple of years, and I was fine with it. The budget is fine. We have a 10-year plan. We have we're always within our budget. We're always, we usually have, we've been actually a surplus. We also need to work on getting businesses here. We've got sales tax, that's actually our biggest revenue. So we need to work on getting businesses here and driving money through that.
So I don't know whether or not taxes will need to be raised in the future. Right now, the budget is fine for the next year, and as Chris and Mr. both mentioned, we have surpluses, we're fortunate. What I am very concerned about, thinking long term, I'm very concerned about what if there is a recession and how will that affect our revenues. As we hear the national conversation about the potential for a recession, I'm very, very concerned about our stormwater assessment that we are doing and what happens when we find out we're going to be paying millions of dollars to fix our stormwater infrastructure. And then, of course, the things that we want, like arts.
Gotcha. Okay, I'm going ahead and pulling a question here that I think is on everyone's mind right now. So, over the years, there's been a fair amount of contention on the city council. One cannot help but think the efficiency and the effectiveness of the council has been diminished to the detriment of citizens and projects. How will you work with the staff and council to find more common ground, make it the norm versus the exception? That's good. 30 seconds.
Who goes first?
Please. Please. Let me read it again.
Thank you. Can you read it again?
Sure. Over the years, there's been a fair amount of contention on city council. One cannot help but think that the efficiency and effectiveness of the council has been diminished to the detriment of citizens and projects. How will you work with the staff and the council to find more common ground and make it the norm versus the exception?
The city council and the staff has to work as a team. So basically, going back to what some of the candidates said, most of the things were going in circles and not moving forward. So we need to go back and find a common ground. We all have to go back and agree to disagree on some of the stuff. We may not want everything that's on our mind, so we got to go back and see what is the best thing for the Johns Creek city and the residents. So we go back and work on the common cause and work towards that one. Then we can push the projects moving into the execution phase rather than just sitting in the shelf. Thank you.
I can tell you one of the better things that, first of all, we need to have on the city council, more collaboration and cooperation and transparency. I think if we have all those three, we would have success. The second in command of the police department, we had to do it all the time. We had to hold ourselves accountable because we were dealing with urgent situation. We were dealing with de-escalation situation, problem solving. So you have to do that all the time. In order to do it, you have to have collaboration, cooperation, and transparency. Make sure everybody's on the same page.
You need more adults in the room. You need adults that know how to debate without resulting to divisiveness. You need to have adults in the room that know how to agree without forming alliances. And you need adults in the room that know how to disagree without forming factions. We have two factions in our city council. They've retreated to their corners, and they believe that one of their people might be the next mayor, so they don't want to agree with one another, and they don't want to make decisions because they might upset one group of residents. What you need is collaboration on your city council.
So I looked at the votes of the 7 of us over the past couple of years, and we actually have a very different inter-rater agreement. It's very diverse on who agrees with who, and I wouldn't say there is essentially factions as it's been made to seem. As I said in the last debate, I can only control myself. I try to be affable, respectful, and if there's something that's not in the best interest of the residents, I'm not going to vote for it to just go along with the group and collaborate. You any of the council members or any of or the mayor, and I've worked with all 6 of them to different degrees on different projects, and we have collaborated. And I have the utmost respect for staff, and we have a very, very collaborative environment, and so I can only hope to continue that collaboration that I've made with them.
I think that city council all needs to be reminded of one thing, and all of us as candidates do. We're here to serve the citizens. We're not here to serve each other, to push for pet projects that we were promising people during while we were running or not promising to, or said we would stop this or do that. We serve the entirety of this city, not the vocal 30, 10, 5%, whatever number you want to throw out there, but everyone, especially the people who don't always have a voice.
As Ken said, and I agree with him, I'll take it a couple of steps further. Not only do we need adults on the city council, we need independent thinkers. We have none right now. We might have one that goes one direction, and there's a lot of people that will side with that person, and then we have other people that go another direction and side with that person. What I can't believe is that we have such a division on our city council. I kind of only thought that happened in Washington or maybe on a state level. In a community that's trying to work together, that needs to work together, go ahead and watch the city council meetings. There are 7 people that do not work together.
So I've had the opportunity to work with everybody currently seated on city council as well as members from prior city councils. So I know I'm able to work with people. There was a time when the mayor wouldn't even talk to me. And he talks to me now. He'll ask me my opinion. He actually appointed me to planning commission, not because I agreed with him or went along with him or I'm seated in his pocket, but because I was qualified for planning commission. So with that stated, I'm ready to work with everybody and anybody, as well as staff. The staff know me as well from planning commission and my time at the JCCA.
I actually don't see that we have too much division either. I think that everyone has to represent the residents, and everyone is doing it. Maybe there is division in that aspect, but what I see is that you need a strong, independent leader that's going to make decisions on facts, not on emotions, not on someone else or a special interest group. It's based on facts. As long as you do that and we have transparency and facts, you will have a good decision maker. You have to be that person.
So in my professional capacity, I literally work day to day with people that disagree with me, and my job is conflict resolution and working in the best interest of the client. And to do that, you can't be a jerk to your opposing counsel. Like, the dynamic between you and opposing counsel is always professional, and that's what everyone on city council, and what the residents also need to remember about city council. If I'm talking to someone else on city council who might be in a different viewpoint than me, the fact that we agree, or not that we agree, that we can be cordial and professional with each other shows that we're being professional on behalf of the residents of the city. The clients may hate each other, but as professionals, we have to work together and always keep it from being personal.
Thank you. Okay, so we're quickly running out of time here. So what we want to do is ask one more question right now, and then I'm going to open up the mic to the floor if anyone wants to ask a direct question, because I don't think we're going to get through all the questions. So if there's something that you really want to ask, if you put it in here and you do remember the question, please just ask for the mic and let's go ahead and ask some questions. Let's go with that. One more question here. Let's try to keep this at 30 seconds, or 20 to 30 seconds, and we'll start with Erin this time.
Okay, thinking over your professional career, provide an example where you took steps to ensure a colleague's accountability where there otherwise would not have been transparency and accountability. What was the situation, the action that you took, and what did it cost you?
I'm going to need some time to think about that because I cannot think of a situation that would fall into that category. the person asked the question here, to clarify perhaps? I can read it. Yeah.
I'll read it to you again. So this is from your professional career, not personal, an example where you took steps personally to ensure a colleague's accountability, where otherwise there would not have been transparency and accountability. And what was the situation, the action that you took, and what did it cost you to do that?
I can't think of an example. I mean, as we're fiduciaries to our clients, if I had a colleague that was doing something unethical, they would have been fired and probably lost their bar license. But I can't think of a situation where that kind of action was required.
I don't want you to repeat it because it is, but it's a very difficult question to answer. I can tell you that I would, as long as you have transparency, as long as you have, as long as you're working with others and listening to their point of views, you probably would less likely have issues with that. That's part of the reason why I am promoting that we have transparency in the city so that our residents aren't confused or don't understand what's going on. As long as we have transparency, you won't have the issues that we may be having now.
So professionally, this is a rather interesting question for me. I had a colleague very early on. By the way, I'm a state licensed massage therapist. She had taken a client who had actually seen several of the other therapists in our practice. And he ended up raping her. And we had to have the conversation of, you need to take this to the police. This has to be dealt with through the police. I can't tell you how gut-wrenching that process was, being a fairly new therapist out in that world. And yes, we had to be transparent. There were policies and practices we had to change in the office. And I don't know that it actually cost me anything, but it made me more aware of what was going on in our world.
Working in the securities industry, I can tell you out of all the candidates up here, I am the one that's probably the most exposed. You can go look me up online at finner.org. You can see anything that's happened to me in my whole entire career. I work in an industry that is 100% transparent, and has to be all the time. We are audited annually by the SEC. I had to sign disclosures when I came and applied for city council. If I get elected, I have to continue to disclose to the government on a routine basis what I do and who I'm accounting to.
So, in my very first career, I worked in the securities industry. I worked for a very large brokerage firm here in Atlanta. There's a stockbroker we all loved because we were young and poor, and he would buy us lunch. It was very odd because he didn't have any clients. And he asked for something one day, and I thought it odd. And I went to the branch manager, got a sign-off, kept that in my file. That stockbroker went to jail for stealing over $3 million from athletes, from teachers, and from people like you. So it cost me my job at that firm, but I got another job, and it's better now. But you have to be willing to stand up when it's wrong.
I don't have a, well, I guess this is slightly applicable, but when I was doing my undergrad at UGA as a research assistant, so not to, I'm going to out myself as a millennial as well. I'm more of a senior or elder millennial, but we didn't have the capabilities to have the accountability on some of the data, and so it could be easily manipulated. And then there was a graduate student that essentially was manipulating the data for research purposes and to get published. And so I just brought that to the department chair because science and evidence-based research really should be the truth. And nothing really happened to me. I mean, the grad student was extremely mad, and he did not graduate with his PhD, but there were very little consequences for that. So.
My background, before I went to law school, I
studied theology and I was a student minister at a church. And there was a man who taught a special needs Sunday school class on a Sunday morning, but on Wednesday night he taught middle school boys. But on Sunday morning there were others in that part of the church, but on Wednesday night there was not. He was up there with middle school boys, and he became very hostile when I started meeting up there. I went to the church leaders and I said, there's an issue here. There shouldn't be someone up in that area by themselves on Wednesday night. Later I found out that not at that church, but at a former church, he had molested children and went to prison. And I stood up, not because I had direct evidence, but I thought that the appearance was bad, and there was nothing to lose, and I would do it again. I didn't accuse him of anything. I just said that we shouldn't have one adult working with students up in an area where there's not other people. And so I'm willing to step out and say if something doesn't look right, and I'll do it in a diplomatic way.
I can tell you in my line of work in police, that wasn't a gray area. So, being second in command of the police department, there were several times we had to take unpopular and make unpopular decisions with our personnel. We had to relieve them of their duties due to some type of inappropriate action for themselves or some type of allegation made against them. So we really had to make some unpopular decisions, and sometimes what we found out, it wasn't true. And then other times it was true. So you have to make sure you get all of the facts, review the totality of circumstances, and find out why certain incidents happen. But in my line of work, I mean, it was pretty much cut and dry. We had policies, we had rules, and then you had state law. So we had to deal with our personnel according to our policy and procedures and also state law.
Thank you.
It happened during the sale process with my colleague. During the sale process, he went back and sold an add-on which we don't really offer. When I came to know that one, then I had to go back, talk to the colleague, and also we had to go back and communicate with the client, saying that in a polite way, in a more professional way, saying that we are expecting that products and service to be add-on in the future, but at the current time we don't have that one. So that was a challenge, because doing that one, I put the salesperson in the spot saying that he did something that's not supposed to. All the time, there was a few months of rupture, but again, over 6 months, he learned that that's the only way to do it, do the right thing. Just go back and promise only that what we can deliver, not what we expect to deliver in the future. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, is there anyone that wants to ask a question now? Open mic.
So we've been talking a lot about concrete pavements, sidewalks, CCTV cameras, and what have you, all the hard stuff. This is going to be a very soft question. I think as a community leaders, you set the tone, and as well as the mayor. So one of the questions, I submitted 3 questions via email and 2 questions here. This is one of the sections. I've lived here also 2 decades as well, and I've seen a lot of transformation. Johns Creek has become highly diverse over the past decade. However, it is highly segregated, whereby the diverse cultures don't really mesh. Everyone seems to get along, but really not well integrated, as seen in the school atmosphere. So many of you have children, probably have visited schools, and I see a lot of segregated friendships and relationships even among parents. How do you think the city council can make an impact towards more well-integrated community? And this is not a gotcha question, it's just a more like problem-solving question, how you would solve problems, and your sensitivity to this, if you ever felt sensitivity towards this, towards creating a more cohesive community. What are your approaches? And what can city council do versus us, the community at large? As you can see, even today, I mean, we're not really well represented in our diversity, but this Johns Creek is probably one of the most diverse communities in the country. And when Money Magazine and all these magazines vote us as one of the best places to live, that is one of the characteristics that it's actually tooted. So it's supposed to be a very positive thing. But I just don't see in our community that we're really integrated.
Thank you. Is that directed for individual or?
No, everyone, just 30 seconds.
Okay.
One question.
That can be addressed through the Arts and Culture Center. Once we have that one, the event that's going to be happening in the Arts and Culture Center, we would get all the communities involved. As I was doing the meet and greet, I met one of the representatives from the different communities. That's what we were talking about. Rather than those silos, we need to come back and connect those things. Every event that happens, we need to go back and make sure everyone from the different culture come back and experience that. So Arts and Culture Center would be a right way to approach this one. With all the events happening in that center, attracting everyone from the different cultures.
And I agree, art is one of the main factors that we can use. Also team sports, as a city leader and city council, I think maybe we can get involved more in the high schools if we see those issues and try to make them all inclusive. Maybe even invite them to city council and let them see the process. Hope that we have adults in the room though when we invite them. But try to include more and encourage more diversity, not only on the city staff, but city council, and try to promote it also in the schools to make sure that it's prevalent there, it's accepted there, and the students appreciate it, and also the staff promotes it in the schools.
There's a recent report that says that Metro Atlanta will grow by 2.9 million people by 2050. And we will be more diverse. We need people on our city council that are open, that want Johns Creek to be a home for anyone that's looking for a home, that we do not close the gate behind us. Openness has touched our family. My sister is adopted. Our daughter is adopted. My sister's son is adopted. We need people that understand openness. If we do that, will be more cohesive.
Thank you.
So I think one of the successes of the past couple of years was the implementation of the International Festival, and I think that experience has been phenomenal. I think it's been a success because we have so many cultures represented here in Johns Creek that everyone puts on a performance and everyone wants to show the best of their culture. So I think that was a big win, and I think also working with the schools, they've had, International Food Day and other things. And to Dilip's point, I do think the Legacy Center will have an impact on that. And then finally, I really think where I've had the most diverse relationships was on the sports fields, to what Brian said. And I think when I first ran, I was discussing the parks plan, but there was a large demand for cricket fields. And so just really having the council go door to door and hitting every door to see really what the population desires. And I have been a champion of cricket fields. So it's again, through those different things, Legacy Center, team sports, the International Festival, those have been a phenomenal success.
I felt very blessed that the subdivision I live in, which is small, it's less than 70 homes, is extremely diverse. And we come together as a group. But our city, as a city, needs to do more to educate. The holiday of Diwali is a great example that just passed. There were so many posts. What are the fireworks for? Why are there fireworks? Part of what the city, as we and all of us as candidates need to do is to make sure we communicate. What's going on? Hey, there's going to be fireworks coming up. This is why. Go here to learn more. Ask your neighbors why they do what they do. Most of the time, if I were to ask someone, why do you do it that way? They're going to tell me. And then I can learn and I can pass that education on to others and especially to my children.
It's a good question. So just really to summarize your question, you're asking about how do we create a better sense of community. And the Performing Arts Center, it really jazzes me up. I got a chance to talk to Wayne He's the chair of that committee. He's also the head of Johns Creek Orchestra, Symphony Orchestra. And, you know, when I sat down with him, I mean, just the passion that he has to move that forward and the lack of the city council helping to champion that event to move forward is not there. And, you know, I did speak with somebody that wants cricket fields here in Johns Creek, and I was told that it's been a very hard line no, and they're going to go back and revamp and look at some of the things they want to do. So, big Asian community in our population, there's different sports that go to different cultures, and we're not going after some of those things.
So I watched the city try to engage different groups, and I think over the past 5 years, they've done a much better job. As I look out, I do see more diversity than we used to see 4 or 5 years ago. So that, in my opinion, is phenomenal. I've had a chance to work with the Student Leadership Secretary of State Ambassadors group, and they are a diverse group, and they work together very well. I think as we move forward, you know, we do have opportunities for vibrancy, and it is about being more inclusive and not so exclusive.
We do have a lot of work to do, but we also, I've been fortunate because I am a minority, but I also have a diverse group of friends and diverse group of support. One of the things that we mentioned was we've got the Legacy Center that's coming up. That's going to be a great opportunity to also showcase our diverse groups that we have here in their arts and abilities that we have. We have the International Festival. We can also do more festivals, more events that can showcase and also include everyone. We can educate people. We can also have more events in the schools. One of the things is like the Diwali lights. I'd love to learn more about it. I would love to learn more about everyone's culture. It's something that I think that we can also encourage as something we do, as we do on a monthly basis where we're just a learning opportunity for everyone.
So this is super important to me. I am biracial, bi-ethnic, and bilingual. My mother immigrated to this country from Guatemala in 1979, but my father's family moved here from Europe in the 1600s. So it's truly, my family is truly the American melting pot, and it's one of the reasons I chose Johns Creek as a place I wanted to raise my family. And one thing that we could do to foster a sense of community, the city council has very little we can do to make people be friends with each other. But one thing we can do is encourage community, encourage the city to have a sense of identity through the city center, and the reason we all move here, which is education. I think that's the common thread for everyone in the city.
Thank you, Erin. Okay, I've got a couple more questions here in the back as we start winding this down. What I'd like to do is, I've got a couple baskets I'd like to pass around to say thank you to St. Benedict's, and also if you're so willing to provide a small little donation to Veterans Memorial that we talked about earlier today, feel free. We're going to pass them around, and I think it's a very good cause, and if we can all throw in something that would be beautiful. Here's the next question.
In this period of time, this is a simple yes/no question. Do you support the extension of MARTA heavy rail up in North Fulton?
Yes.
No.
No.
Absolutely not.
It's hard to define North Fulton because technically it's already in North Fulton. I think the express lanes on 400 will take care of the issue, so no.
No. No. No, but it is already in North Fulton because it's in Santa Springs.
No for now.
Okay, here's the next question.
T-SPLOS was passed just under 3 years ago. there's been a lot of contention as to what flexibility City Council has regarding the T-Splosh projects. Multiple of our surrounding cities seem to have great discretion in how they define their projects. For example, the city of Roswell just changed their $59 million project. It spans Georgia 400 and totally changed the design. For some reason, Johns Creek seems to feel encumbered by those, by the original definitions. And the definitions are vague. If you look at the original intergovernmental agreement, the IGA, it says we're going to widen Jones Bridge Road, or we're going to widen Haynesbridge Road. There's no specificity to it whatsoever, but we seem hamstrung by a legal interpretation that none of the other metropolitan cities in Fulton County seems to agree with. Do you agree that T-Splosh are budget estimates and that the city council, who are representatives of the people, have the discretion to change those project definitions? Thank you very much.
Malik, would you like to start, please? Make that about 20 seconds so we can try to move through this one.
We had that same discussion in the last debate too, so about the flexibility. Basically, rather than tying the funds, looks like the city council and also the legal team discussed, and basically we don't need to tie it to a specific project. We need to tie it to a specific purpose. So basically, yes, there is a little flexibility, but maybe not a whole lot.
Yeah, I think we had this question before, and it was brought to our attention that staff had already talked it over with legal, and they said that there was some flexibility, but it is based on the community needs. There are guidelines with T-Splosh, but you can only do what the guidelines say up to a certain point. But there is, I guess, a little flexibility there that we can do, but legal says that, you know, we really can't do a whole lot different from what the guidelines are.
First, thank you for your service as Johns Creek's representative to the T-Splosh County Committee. You cannot tax for a specific purpose and then use the money for a different purpose. That said, so long as a project achieves traffic congestion relief, we can modify what we do. So there are some parameters, but you got to get your smartest minds in the room to make decisions on what the best solution is for each project.
As Mr. Fitzgerald, as you know, I'm a firm believer in doing what's the most effective in terms of a traffic project. So I do believe there is leeway. After speaking with our council, he actually confirmed that there is leeway in how we implement the projects. So I believe I was the one who brought up the Jones Bridge widening to address most variants of congestion relief, but while also retaining that and saving a substantial sum of money where we could apply to other congestion relief efforts. And the mayor vetoed that project essentially. So that's out of 10 T-Splosh projects, we're moving on 8 of them on Tier 1. It's that Jones Bridge that was held up by that veto. So yeah, we have flexibility, and we need to do what's in the best interest of our residents.
As we've all answered before, there is flexibility. I think the challenge that we have, Mr. Fitzgerald, is the city's projects were written much different, apparently, than some of the other cities' projects. Some of ours were very specific. So unfortunately, the flexibility there will not be as great as what Roswell just did. Is there flexibility? Yes. Do we need to flex it? Yes. It's congestion relief. Center lane down Jones Bridge isn't considered congestion relief right now. That, again, that's part of what we've got to look at.
Mr. Fitzgerald, you and I spoke about a week ago, maybe earlier this week, and we did talk about flexibility. We also talked about potential conflict of interest in some of these projects that are being introduced into our city and the execution of them. And I think if I'm elected, we're going to get to the bottom of what's going on and why the delays are taking place with the engineering firm as well as the city.
So yes, Mr. Fitzgerald, thank you for the question. There is some flexibility. I think we have to look at it through the objective filters before we become subjective. So, you know, as each project comes along, I think as Chris and council have done, they've looked at the data as far as what will move traffic and set the parameters based on that.
Hi, Michael. I talked to you also about this a little bit, and I also believe that there should be some flexibility, and we need to base it on the best interest of our residents based on the facts that we have. And, you know, one of the issues that I had was what was voted on wasn't necessarily what we got, and that's my issue. So, you know, so with that said, we absolutely should have flexibility.
So I've read the cases relating to SPOS taxes, and so I understand the flexibility argument. The reason that I'm wary of coming out like strongly on one side or the other is that I know that the city has received privileged communications from its attorney and from the Attorney General of the state of Georgia saying that they don't have flexibility. And when I've asked to see those, I've been told it's attorney-client privilege. So I feel like, other than Chris, all of us here don't actually have all of the information that would help us make the best decision.
Thank you. So I have two more questions, and if it's okay, in time, and then we'll do the closing remarks. Is everyone okay with that? Maybe one question, and then closing remarks. Thank you.
Hi, Christine Austin from Willow Run, and my question is about campaign contributions. So first, will you or have you accepted donations from developers or other entities that will have contracts pending for the city? And if you do or have accepted such donations, how will you avoid a conflict of interest when those hearings come up before the council or those contracts come up for renewal?
Try to see if we can keep that to 20 seconds.
I filed an affidavit of exemption to raise and spend less than $2,500 in this race, and I have only accepted a small amount of individual contributions. So no developers, to answer.
I don't have any special interest or any developers that have donated to me, so I don't have any conflicts.
I did accept a donation from the Providence Group. They approached me. They've watched me over the past 5.5 years. They like the fact that I'm going to take a look at their plan and give a fair judgment on it. I was actually quite shocked that they gave a donation to me because I was on Planning Commission when we denied the project that they had on State Bridge. So, yeah, do I have it? Is it a payoff? No.
I did accept a donation from a developer, but he is not in this area, so no conflict of interest.
I have not accepted a donation from any developer. There also is, in the city, when you file for any development, you must check whether or not you've donated funds to anyone on the council. So the question is, did the questioner ask and donate to its candidate or candidates? So part of it is, you have to know who's asking your questions and who's getting the answers.
So if you look on my CCDR, October 25th, that I submitted on time, if you want to look at that, I mostly get my campaign contributions from individuals in Johns Creek.
All of my donations have come from individuals except one came from a law firm. Two of the individuals are, you might say, affiliated or associated with the developer. He stood in my foyer and said that he is looking for nothing in return. And we talked about how when I go into a courtroom, all I want is for the judge to give me a fair shake. And he said that's all that he is looking for. What he doesn't want is for people to come in predisposed against him
and that's what's happened in the past. So I'll accept money, but there is no conflict of interest. They know that I'm an independent voice. I won't vote with others just because they tell me to.
Yes, most of my campaign contribution came from family and friends and members, people that I know live in Johns Creek and outside of Johns Creek. So I don't know any developers right now that have contributed to my campaign.
Most of my donations came from the friends and family. No, I did not accept anything from the developers. No developer did any donation for me.
Okay, so I'm going to just move into the closing right now, and your closing statements I'd like to have. In your closing statements, I'd like you to sort of incorporate this question for yourself. In the last 6 weeks, 8 weeks, there's been a lot of social media, name calling, half truths out there, things that color people possibly in the wrong way. I want this to be your opportunity to set the record straight. Tell people the biggest misconception or the biggest issue out there that is incorrect. And roll that into your closing statement if it's possible. Try to set the record straight. This time, let's start with Aaron, since the week started.
This is our closing statement.
This is a closing statement.
So, truth be told, I have avoided the internet and really just stuck to my message and stuck to my campaign strategy, which is speaking to voters and just trying to really have tunnel vision of encouraging people to come out to vote and not get distracted by what I hear and understand from others is some pretty ugly stuff happening on the internet. And so please don't tell me what they're saying about me. I don't want to know. That being said, I've really enjoyed this process. I've really enjoyed speaking to people. I've knocked personally probably like 1,500 doors in the last 6 weeks, and it's been a lot of work, but it's been really rewarding to talk to people in Johns Creek and hear that that I'm not totally off base, that they are excited about the opportunities we have in this city, that we have a great foundation that's been set for us, and let's just keep moving forward and make this city truly the best place to live in North Fulton. Please check me out on my website. It's Erin, E-R-I-N, for johnscreek.com, and I will be at Peach Coffee, Roaster on Jones Bridge from 9:30 to 10:30, roughly on Saturday. If you would like to stop by and say hello and ask me any questions that you have specifically. Thank you for your time.
I know there's a lot of stuff that goes on in social media, and I actually try very hard to stay off of it. I only stay on my page, and I really don't do anything else beyond it, just because, and this election season has been very nice for me, I'll be honest. This has been very nice. Last time was not so fun, but this one has been a very nice, where we all are getting along, and we all are supportive of each other. We don't always agree on every single issue, but we all want to see Johns Creek successful. We all want to see Johns Creek be a great city for everyone. We want to be proud of the city, and that's what we want. We want a strong, independent leader. We want a vision for the city. We want transparency. We want fiscal responsibility. That's what I'm going to do. That is what I want to do for you. I want to provide that voice for you. So I'm asking for your vote. You can also check me out on johnscreek.com, or you can check me out on Facebook. I'm an open book, to be honest. I'm available, and I knock on doors, I canvass, I talk to as many people as I possibly can. I can't meet everyone, but I try very hard to meet as many people as possible. And, like I said, I'm asking for your vote because I really want to truly represent you, and give you your voice on council. Thank you.
So in the past 6 weeks, this has been quite interesting for me. I've watched several election cycles, and I've seen it get nastier and nastier every time. I've had people go online and make assumptions about me and put it out there that, I'm in the mayor's pocket. No, I'm not. Or that I go along with this group or that group. No, I don't. My profession has been attacked. My 20-year-old son brought me a posting and I had to have an unpleasant conversation with him. So, you know, I'm happy that there are people that do reach out to me and ask me questions. You know, they'll go, oh, I heard this from so-and-so, and they come and say, hey, where do you land on this issue? And after the conversation, they understand, and we get along and move on. I've had many conversations with people standing in their doorways on their front porches, and it's been great. I've met some great people. I think whether I win or lose, I've got a group of cyclists to work with on a project, so I'm looking forward to that. But yeah, I have a website, judyforjohnscreek.com, and I'm on Facebook still for now. And you know, just meeting the people, hearing the ideas, getting ready to move things along. That's what I hear from everybody. Thank you.
So one thing you know about me is that I'm an independent thinker. Like I said to you in the beginning when I started off, I fight for my clients every day. It's how I get paid. I will fight for the community. One thing that I'm sick of in this council is a lot of talk but no action. And here's what I'm going to bring to the table: real life experience and common sense values. If you go to my website, thomasforjohnscreek.com, everything that I see it stand for is on there. Everything that you've received in the mail from me, my name is on everything that goes out there. I don't stand behind anything. I don't answer and I don't subscribe to any of the fake news media that's local in this community. I ask that you don't do the same thing. If you've got a question about a candidate, if you've got a question about where they stand, go ask them directly. Thank you.
Again, thank you for coming tonight. It's interesting to watch people talk about you and say, somebody call you and say, hey, did you see this? And I go, no, I don't really want to. It doesn't really matter. But it's sad that grown adults are acting like teenage middle schoolers. We need to all raise the conversation out of the gutter because it sits there. The biggest misconception I see about me is I like in everybody's pocket apparently, especially the mayor's. Nope, didn't support the mayor last time. Ask him. He worked really hard to get my vote. Unfortunately, never had a sign, never supported it. I think the mayor's done some good things. I think the mayor's made some major mistakes. But in the end, there's nobody else who put 13 years into this city as hard as he did. So like him or hate him, he brought our city to where we are. The problem is, we need to move our city forward. For the past 3 years, I've worked at the JCCA, working with HOAs to give them a voice with the city and to give a voice, excuse me, inside his mind, with developers on what's happening around them and in our cities. I want to take that and turn around and work with the city staff and with all of our residents, not just the ones that belong to the JCCA, to say this is what we need to do.
So I've had quite a lot of lies and misinformation, just straight up dirty campaigning against me, and there's so many out there that I really can't just pick one, but I guess the Adams mailer that I own the vape shops would be the biggest, one of the untruths. I do not own the vape shops. It's just, this is probably going to be my last term if I'm elected. All the stereotypes you hear about politics, it's very true. There's a lot of snakes in the grass, and it wears on your soul. It really does. And I kind of, you know, I wanted to respond to a lot of these lies and misinformation, the dirty campaigning, but I've spoken with some of the political mentors I have, and they're good people with good scruples, and I'm just going to stay above the fray. I'm going to talk about what I've done and what I can't do. I can't do it any other way. So that being said, I just want to thank you for coming out tonight. I know it's a long endeavor to find your best city council candidates, and again, I would just visit the website, go to chriscoughlin.com, look at the accomplishments, look at some of my plans, I'd like to continue having those successes here on council and representing you. So thank you for your time.
My campaign has the best supporters in all of Johns Creek. My wife said a couple of weeks ago, she said, look, just look at the people that this campaign is attracting. Those that want not more development, but a better mix of business. Those that want to support the arts. Those of minority groups in our city. And those that want to end the divisiveness. Indecision is a decision. And it's the worst kind of decision. Because it doesn't allow you to anticipate the consequences and to control your future. The worst misconception is people think that because I'm running against an incumbent that often opposes the mayor, that I'm in the back pocket of the mayor. I've seen the mayor twice in my life. Once at a tree lighting ceremony where our daughter was singing and he welcomed the entire audience. The second time was when I went to qualify and he stepped out of his office to greet each person that was qualifying. I've seen him twice. If you want an independent voice that listens to the residents and does what's best for this city, you've got a candidate for Post 4. Don't let it escape you that this incumbent drew not one, not two, but 3 challengers. I know Chris thinks that he has to defend the entire work of the council. Okay? We're running because our council is broken.
"37 years of service, folks. Last 11, second in command of Johns Creek Police. During those 37 years, and especially the last 11, being committed and dedicated to the citizens of Johns Creek. The last few weeks, and I know Ken said that the mayor greeted him when he qualified. Mayor didn't greet me, nobody did. I don't know if I missed the memo or something, I don't know. But just to say this, the last few weeks, working on this campaign, because I've been planning to run until the last day when I qualified. Once I realized that the city needed my experience, my leadership, and I could be an asset to city council and also be a voice for the citizens of Johns Creek. Right now, my wife is not here tonight because she's at home now organizing volunteers to make phone calls to you guys. Everybody can't be in the same place at the same time. It's called teamwork. And that's what we have to do, teamwork. We have to be committed to serve the citizens. We got to be dedicated to doing the job as public servants. And we have to continue to move this city forward in the way that you want it to move forward. Not the way we want it to move forward. But we have to execute your wishes, your plans, and make sure we get the job done. Just like the police department did to make sure this city was safe. Same way. Thank you.
Thank you, President Benedict Church, for hosting this event, and Larry and Parsons Fund for coordinating this. Thank you. Thank you, residents, for taking time on a weekday night, in a rainy day, to come attend the event and know about the candidates before you cast your votes. Johns Creek City, our city, and the residents need a leader who has the experience and expertise in corporate leadership, governance, engineering, project management, finance, operations, who can ensure that key decisions are made which will address the growth and the long-term plan for the entire community. More importantly, the leader with the decision-making skills which would have a combination of strategic, data, and people skills. Johns Creek needs a leader independent thinking leader who can build a brand and identity for Johns Creek, and also create an environment, healthy environment for business and residents. During that 8 weeks of a campaign, basically we knocked on so many doors. I did meet Erin.
I know.
So, walking the doors, we get to meet with the people and get to know more stuff. We've been fortunate that we met all the candidates even before the campaign started, and we said, once we get into the campaign trail, we're all going to be busy. So I met Brian, we met for the coffee, I met twice too. And of course I met all the candidates. So we decided to go on a positive note and say, may the best person win. Let's go back and put our best foot forward and show what we have, and let the residents come back and pick the right person. So coming Tuesday, please vote for me. You will choose a candidate with the right skill for the job. Thank you.
I want to just, basically a couple of last words in conclusion here. The fact that everyone's here on a rainy night, it's a testament that, maybe word is getting out. Maybe people will start looking a little deeper into the issues. You tell your friends, your family, let them know what you heard tonight. You can't make a wrong decision here. Everyone here, I've met them personally. I've spent at least an hour with everyone just on the phone. I've probably attended every debate, throughout the city here. You can't make a wrong decision. The question is, who do you believe has the judgment and has your best interest in mind? They all come from different backgrounds, they all have different life experiences, and all that will come to bear when they're on that seat in that council, and they got to pull that decision one way or another, left, right, yes or no. These are the people that are going to lead the city for the next couple of years. And it's you and your families and your friends need to get out to vote. Make this a larger turnout than it was a couple of years ago. I want to thank St. Benedict's, Roger Weiss, the Color Guard, the candidates, everyone here, volunteers, Sam, Maureen, my wife Susan, Christopher, Selena. I want to thank you for reaching in your pocket and pulling out a couple dollars to give it to the Vietnam War and the memorial. And John has been a tremendous host that from day one, when I approached him with the idea, opened it, welcomed me with open arms at St. Benedict's. So thank you very much for coming out. And please reach out to the websites. They're all, we got a lot more to say. We have a lot more questions that we just didn't have time. Thank you guys.